Okay.
All right. Everybody okay? Ready? All good. Good. Okay, today is April 8th, 2025. It's 9:30 a.m. Good morning. This is a scheduled meeting before the Baltimore County Board of Appeals, a public deliberation regarding matter number 24058XA. My name is Fred Lauer. I'm joined on the panel today by Mr. Michael Stelmack and William Paulshock. The request here is by the Islamic Society of Baltimore for the property at 7525 through 7545 Windsor Mill Road. This is a petition for a special exception to permit, excuse me, a cemetery and funeral establishment at the property. Also to grant a variance to allow a structure to be constructed within the residential transition area, so the structure remains outside the urban-rural demarcation line. And thirdly, there's a request to extend the special exception time limit to 5 years. This matter came before the Baltimore County Board of Appeals in this panel on February 19th, 2025. The hearing was held de novo on that date. The appeal was by the community of the administrative law judge decision on the matter dated July 18th, I believe it was, 2024, granting the special exception and variance with certain conditions. Before we get started, I would like to thank the petitioners and their witness and expert testimony. Also to thank the community, Mr. Lewis and Mr. Knopp particularly for their testimony, the Rolling Oak community, the Nolan Brook community, and the Greater Patapsco Community Association. I'd like to publicly thank all of them for the memorandum, the evidence, the witnesses, etc. I thought everyone was very helpful in providing information to the board regarding the matter. And would just like to take the time to acknowledge that. I believe, panel members, there are 6 items that we need to address today. Let me outline the 6 first, and then if we have others, we can add them or discuss them as we go along. What I'd like to do is outline the 6, tell you what I think the 6 are, and then come back to each of them one at a time. Does that make sense? Yes, gentlemen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The first issue I think we have to deal with is, was there legal error in the notification before the ALJ in that the R6 zoning was not advertised as, or not mentioned in the notification of the hearing before the ALJ. I think that's the first thing we need to talk about. Second, I think we need to determine whether that, based on the testimony and evidence before the board, is there sufficient evidence that the plan basically is for a traditional cemetery under section 101 of the Baltimore County zoning regulations. Third, I think we need to decide, if we get, as we go along, if the proposal satisfies the special exception standards under 502 and under the Baltimore County zoning regulations. Next, I think we need to look at the variance provisions under the zoning code and see if in fact they meet the legal requirements, the standards for uniqueness, practical difficulty, and unnecessary hardship if the board does not grant the variance. Fifth, I think that's number 1 here. should the special exception be extended beyond the to the 5-year period of time as requested by and we're going to call them petitioners because they presented the original petition, meaning the Islamic Society of Baltimore. And lastly, there are a number of requests um, uh, for us to look at traffic studies, stormwater management, environmental impact, forest conservation, also entrance and exits off of Salem Road, whether we want to restrict that or not, whether we want to send it back to the ALJ for looking at these various studies, and also whether the markers, there should be a restriction in terms of the flat markers, I think, as was agreed upon by the Islamic Society. So I kind of grouped all those others together, if you will, that we can discuss at the end. So that's how I see our progression in getting through this. Any problems with that? Should we go ahead and proceed, gentlemen?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, good. Well, the first issue then is the notification before the ALJ. The protestants specifically said that the RC6 was not mentioned in the notification and that was inadequate, and would like your opinion. If you want to weigh in on this first, either one of you, please.
I guess I think there was ample time on the correction. It wasn't done in the 11th hour of the process. Everyone had ample time to get all the correct information and to proceed without any prejudice of any sort. And so I do not feel it's an issue in this case.
Okay, Mr. Stelmach?
I agree with Mr. Palachuk. I think, you know, at the very least, this is a de novo hearing on the same issue that's been heard once before. And I think all the participants knew what the issue was about. They were able to bring whatever arguments they had. So I don't feel they suffered any prejudice. I would adopt the reasoning from the ALJ's opinion, which I agree with.
Yeah, I agree with you, gentlemen. Basically, I think there was actual notice that the proposed use of the property was for a funeral establishment and a cemetery. I mean, that was pretty clear. So whether it said RC6 or PQ22, everyone knew that the property was to be used as a cemetery and a funeral establishment. So I think that in terms of notice that there was actual knowledge that the use of the property was there, and following, and I think the Cassidy case is the one that I looked at, and following that and others, I think there was sufficient notice of this cemetery and funeral establishment. I don't think anyone was harmed by it. So I think we're in agreement that there was not legal error in terms of the notice related to the advertising of the public hearing before the ALJ and before us in some ways also. Okay, so we're settled on that. Second thing is that I had down here is determine whether, based on the testimony and evidence, that there is sufficient evidence before this board that this is a cemetery in the traditional use of a cemetery under section 101.1, and that's the use that's planned. I can go first on this one if you want. I believe it's a cemetery that they've testified says would allow all type of burials, including vaults and non-vaults. And they stated, the petitioner stated that the burials would be some, as I said, with vaults and some without vaults, and open to all types of burials. I don't think it's an exclusive conservative burial ground or natural burial ground under the code definitions as I see them, and want to get your reaction to that, gentlemen.
Okay.
Uh, I agree with you. I think that um, there are other governing bodies that are at work here as well that determine whether something is acting in accordance with what these folks have actually asked for. If they're acting out of compliance with those rules and regulations, then those governing bodies would be involved. Um, and as to the rest of you, what you said, I agree.
Okay.
I agree 100% with the definition all the way through. Just
Okay,
confirm.
so we're in agreement on that
Well,
one.
can I say one thing while we're here, by the way?
Sure.
This is, I want to talk really briefly about the petitioner's memorandum at page 17, where they discuss the issue of is it a cemetery, is it a national burial ground, etc. And one of the issues the petitioner brings into this is, and I'm just going to read from the memorandum. It says, the motives behind the protestants arguing that the burials here are other than a cemetery are either because the subject site does not have sufficient acreage to be a natural burial ground or conservation burial ground, or they harbor some anti-Muslim sentiment. And I just want to say that I feel like it's that statement to be distasteful in the context of the proceeding that we're here in, because there's nothing in the record that indicates that the community is acting on any kind of anti-Muslim bias. We've heard their testimony as to why they object to the project, and they're entitled to their opinion and their feelings about that. Every project that comes before us, someone is protesting for some reason, and they all have very similar reasons. People don't want a certain thing built near them, and we hear the same reasoning frequently, and people are entitled to participate publicly in this process without having to be tarred by the brush of bigotry for saying that, for advocating for themselves. And I just, I think, we have a hearing before us about an assisted living in a neighborhood. People don't want an assisted living in their neighborhood. I don't think that those people hate old people, or have any sort of bias. We have a project about a lady who wants to have a childcare facility in her home, in her neighborhood. People don't want it there. I don't think they hate children or have any sort of bias against, that lady. I think they just don't want that thing in their neighborhood for the reasons they said. I believe the neighbors here when they say, the gentleman next door has a farm. He doesn't want runoff coming onto his property from having all these trees chopped down and whatnot. I 100% credit his testimony about that. Anyway, I think people should be able to assert their interests without that aspersion being cast on them.
Board members, Stelmack, you couldn't have said that any better and clearer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stelmack. So noted. All right, let's go on to number 3. on my list here. Does the proposal satisfy the special exception standards under 502.1, basically the Baltimore County zoning regulations? I believe that based on what, now there is dispute as to some of them, like related to the general health, safety, and welfare in the neighborhood. There's dispute as to like traffic, runoff, things like that. But I believe in general that the testimony presented by I think they had two expert witnesses here for the petitioners, did demonstrate that the standards were met. Um, um, and as we'll get to later on, there will be additional studies and requirements, both of the Baltimore County and the state in terms of licensing and regulations and permitting, that will address some of these concerns. So I feel that in terms of the special exceptions, standards and requirements under 502.1, that the petitioners met that burden, and satisfied those requirements. Gentlemen?
I agree, and I just think that if the protestants had, you know, had if they wanted to dispute the expert testimony, they would have had to actually dispute those facts in the hearing and bring in their own expert or do something, and they just weren't able to do that.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. All right. So we're done with that one. The variance standards. Did they present evidence of uniqueness of the property? Did they present evidence of practical difficulty and necessary hardship? The legal requirements under the zoning code and the case law. My feeling on this one is because of the slope, the stream, the forest conservation area, even Salem Road as it comes in here, makes it unique because it is a one-lane road, and makes it unique in terms of the property itself. Religious requirements come into play here in that I believe it has to face the northeast, or the building needs to face or plots need to face the northeast. The highway widening also comes into play here. And I think all of that, in my opinion, creates a uniqueness, excuse me, I can say that, and the practical difficulty and unnecessary hardship that would be created if they try to fit it in within the urban rural demarcation line. So that's my thought on that, gentlemen.
I agree with you for the reasons you said. Exactly.
Okay.
Agree. Agree.
Okay. The next one, should the special exception be extended to 5 years to allow for this project? I don't know if you want to weigh in first on this one, or I should weigh in first. I mean, whatever. Stelmack, it looks like you have an opinion. You want to opine on this one?
I mean, I don't think it's an unreasonable request. I think we heard some argument about how long this project would likely take, and that I think the clock is already running because a special exemption was granted, or that it's based on the previous project. I think it goes back to that. So I don't see any reason not to grant it.
Mr. Paulshock?
I agree 100%. It's a big project, but it's also,
Yeah, I don't think we, as a matter of fact, should universally always say, oh yeah, give them 5 years. But I do think there are some unique things with this one, as you've stated, Mr. Stelmack. I also think the street widening is going to be a problem. in terms of getting through the legal process of doing that, with the permitting, and we've had a couple other cases recently where they've asked for an extension beyond the 2 years. So I do think that doing the 5 years is probably reasonable under this set of circumstances. So we're in agreement on that. Okay. And the last one, and it was, I kind of put all of this together. There was a suggestion that we require, some of them requested that we send it back and require things, or require things as part of our opinion, if you will. A stormwater plan, a traffic plan, a geophysical and hydraulic study plan, a soil study, environmental impact, forest conservation plan. There was a suggestion about restriction on traffic on Salem Road, somehow restricting that traffic. There was a suggestion about reducing the number of parking spaces, a increase in buffer zones. There were many of them, and I think I mentioned most of them, or hopefully most of them. And my general feeling, if I might opine first on this, my general feeling is that we do have a review process that's going to take place here. Both the state licensing requirement for a funeral home, et cetera, and the county requirements and going through the county process. And in doing that, first of all, some agencies have already weighed in on this, basically, but I think they will weigh in later also when specific plans and designs are submitted on the matter. So in general, I mean, I understand the concerns for these things, but I do trust the county and state agencies to follow the process and answer and address these legitimate concerns. There are a couple of them that I want to address here too, but differently. But in general, that's kind of my take on it. Gentlemen, your thoughts?
Yeah,
I um I do think that we should incorporate the some of the stipulations that are in the ALJ's order, which I think are reasonable. I think we typically do that, but I'm not
Which ones
100% sure.
particularly were you thinking about? Do you in general agree with me that in terms of requiring a new stormwater plan, a geophysical, those various studies, that it really isn't necessary or appropriate, or,
At this stage, no, I don't think it is because I
yeah,
think
you
there's
agree,
another
Mr.
process for
Pascal?
that.
A traffic
yes.
study, et cetera? Yes, okay. Which ones particular, Mr. Stelmack, and then we can kind of go through them.
I mean, well, just to go to the actual order itself, it says, well, he grants a special exception as well.
Yes,
Um, Let me just go down to the relevant parts. But the petitioner must comply with DOP's Act comments. Site access from Salem Road shall be marked, gated, and otherwise limited to secondary use for maintenance vehicle only. All visitors or guests of the property shall be directed to the signage or paving indicators to use the primary entrance exit on Windsor Mill Road. General public or daily employees access to the site from Salem Road is strictly prohibited.
okay, let's talk about that one maybe if we could. Uh, do you think that we're going too far if we say that employees can't use that Salem Road?
I think the size of the road and the general use for, I think, just sort of residential use and the character of that area.
5 houses that are there, I believe, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it would harm the petitioners for their employees to have to use the front entrance. Um,
Okay, I mean, my thought is that we put in some kind, I think it is worth addressing because it did come out and Mr. Knopp, I believe, was the one that testified there, was the neighbor. I think it is worth addressing. I trust that through the planning and process, that traffic and planning will address that issue with the petitioners and through the community also, and have the community's interest. Um, I wouldn't want to restrict it to no access at all, but I- perhaps, I mean, my thought would be something like primary access shall be on Windsor Mill Road, and maybe it shouldn't be primary access or something to
I mean,
that.
I think that's kind of the language that's already in the previous order kind of spells it out. That's how I understood it to be.
Okay, okay. Mr. Paulshock, you want to weigh in one way or the other? I don't
Well,
know if you have the previous order in front of you or we want to read it again.
yeah, the concern is I have is it is a residential. Um, the less access we can is valuable, but as a, look, this is a operational uh, worship that's going to be fairly active. You're going to need to get equipment for whatever type of process uh, that's going on in there, and to limit that uh, in and out as worshipers or whoever
Okay,
is is in there at a special time of life um, of celebration. I think it's important to be able to access that uh, with employees and that stuff. So that's my feel on it.
so would you adopt, were you saying you two gentlemen would adopt basically the language from the ALJ? Is
Correct.
that what you're both saying?
That's what I
Yes.
would do. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Um, the other, if you're in agreement to me, well, we're in agreement with that. What else do we have there, Mr. Stillman?
Just the last item on that order is petitioner shall abide by all requirements of the Maryland Office of Cemetery Oversight. Board of morticians and funeral directors and any other relevant state regulatory agency shall obtain and maintain all COMAR requirements for licensure, permitting, and maintenance. Failure to obtain and maintain any and all licenses, permits, and other regulatory requirements to the state of Maryland may result in an expiration or revocation of this approval. Um, again, I found that to be very reasonable. I think it helps to allay some of the concerns of the community. And I think that notwithstanding the order, they almost certainly have to do that anyway.
Yeah, they have to do it anyway. Question is, do we need to put it in the order or not? Or do you choose to put it in the order? You would, Mr. Stelmack.
Yeah, I would, yeah.
Mr. Paulshock, are you in agreement here?
Agree. Correct.
Okay. Two other things that I have, there was the outside of this is there's, was a suggestion for a reduction. Usually never hear this from the community of the number of parking spaces. My feeling is to let that go with the number that they have. I believe it was 190 some and 140 were required. My feeling is to let that go. If they want to take up the land and put parking spaces up there, I think that's better for the community. Are you all in agreement with that, gentlemen?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Professor? Okay. And the last thing is, that I have anyway on my list is the flat markers. I think they agreed, in my notes, I have that, there was agreement that they not have basically stand-up, markers, that they have flat markers. And I think the community, I think the community mentioned that also, but I do think the Islamic Society of Baltimore did say that that was their plans.
I think that was part of their proposal, yeah.
Should we include that in the order?
Uh, We could. I think that that's what they intended to do to begin with. I don't.
Well, if that's what they intended to do and we think it's helpful and protects the community was concerned about visual impact of markers up there, and that's what they intend to do. Why wouldn't we put it in the order? That's my feeling.
I candidly don't remember reading that concern from the community, to be honest. That particular the issue. I don't. Did someone bring that issue up in one of the memos?
Mr. Paulshock, do you recall? You look like you.
It was talked about, during the hearing, by both parties. And I do believe it should be in there.
Okay,
Okay, that's fine.
okay. We will put something in there regarding the restriction on the type of markers, that basically they're flatter ground markers, I think is what they will be used. All right, that's my list, gentlemen. Do we have anything else here? Have we covered everything? Glance through my notes, take a minute here. Have we covered everything as far as we're,
I think you were very thorough, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Correct.
okay, so we are good then. All right, this will conclude the public deliberation for today on matter 24058. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. See you,
Thank you.
gentlemen.
See you.